One of the many questions that comes up about evidence for survival of bodily death, also known as life after death, has to do with people's encounters with apparent ghosts, what we in parapsychology call apparitions. Now, that term has been used since the late 1800s and the start of the Society for Psychical Research. It has less baggage than the word ghost, although many of us might actually use it interchangeably with the word ghost. So when we're talking about an apparition, we're talking about that which is perceived. So seemingly seen, heard, felt, smelled. It may even come through in this kind of sense of presence that relates to or represents a consciousness, I want to call that spirit, soul, whatever, that has existed after the death of that person's body, or because we have some quite good evidence that we have apparitions also projected by living people. It could be that that consciousness represents someone who is out of body or sending out a message in crisis. Since we're talking about evidence for survival of bodily death, really, it's the apparitions of the deceased, discarnate entities, people without bodies, that are most important to that evidence. The others, apparitions of living people, support the idea that consciousness can exist or aside from the body or is projected outside the body and brain. Post-mortem apparitions or apparitions of the dead are often seen by people, and most often, the majority of them are experienced by people who see, hear, or feel, typically see and hear, a friend or loved one or relative who has just passed away. So typically the period is from about time of death to 2 to 3 days. Those are the vast majority of those cases, of those representations. And they can appear to people who didn't even know the person was ill, was in an accident, was sick, and so on. In fact, those are the better verifiable cases that we have. That's probably about 90, 95%, or maybe even more cases. Most of those apparitions never appear again. We assume that they move on to the other side so that mediums can communicate with them rather than kind of sticking around in our physical world. There's another set of apparitions that might stick around for weeks or even months and may connect to a location because that was their connection in life, or may stick around family and friends just to make sure the family and friends are okay. So we do hear from mediums that sometimes they use the term earthbound to those spirits, or may even use the word ghost as opposed to spirit. Mediums will often talk about spirit as actually being on the other side and communicating back. There are thousands of good apparition cases, or at least experiences on record, from the start of the Society for Psychical Research in 1882. And of course, you can find many in the historical record going back hundreds, if not thousands of years as well. We have verifiable cases. We have really, really good cases. And to me, as a field researcher in parapsychology who specializes in these kinds of cases, the best cases tend to be those that have multiple witnesses, sometimes multiple witnesses not even in the same place. So, for example, I had an experience with a late friend of mine who appeared basically as a smell and a sensation to me in a very particular situation. Clearly, the smell was his cigar smoke. About a week and a half after he died, turns out, as I found out, that 25 of us around that same time had had a similar experience with the smell and sense of presence, either driving a car alone or flying an aircraft alone. He was an aviation expert, as it happens. So that kind of thing, multiple witnesses who hadn't talked to each other, same experience, is really great. Then we have multiple witnesses seeing and hearing or perceiving that apparition at the same time. We have that over time. People who didn't even know a place had an apparition, had a ghost there, seeing and describing the same person. And again, it could also be auditory, it could be olfactory, you could smell it, that kind of thing. So those are the best kinds of cases, especially when they carry with them messages or communication that we can then verify, some information we can do. The same thing you would do with an evidential medium. And let me just finish up by saying that apparitions are not optical or acoustical phenomena. There's a good reason why we can't photograph them. Part of that, and let me just kind of explain that we could have those multiple cases, multiple witness situations going, where there is an apparent apparition in the room, and maybe there's 10 people there. Two people are seeing the apparition, but not hearing anything. One person is seeing and hearing the apparition's voice. A fourth person is hearing the voice of the apparition trying to talk. Another person or two, they're smelling perfume, cologne, body odor, something associated with that person. And the rest, they're looking at everybody else like they're crazy. Because we all get the signal, just like a medium gets a signal from that spirit. And we conjure up, thanks to the information there, or process a perception visually, auditorily, olfactorily, sense of presence, based on us, not based on them, based on us. Different mediums will perceive things visually. They'll get words, they'll get auditory stuff, they'll get other sensations, because that's how they process information. So I just want to let you know that the good reason we can't photograph them is because they don't reflect light or give off light, which is why not everybody sees them. They don't create sound waves, so we can't really record their voices. And in the situations where people are experiencing apparitions, all very important for us. It's all a psychic process. So consider that if you experience an apparition, you're having a psychic experience. You are connecting with that entity, that consciousness. It doesn't make you a medium, but it does mean that you can connect with someone who wants to communicate with you. Thanks very much. I'm Loyd Auerbach, Director of the Office of Paranormal Investigations, currently President of the Forever Family Foundation. Take care.